Welcome to Live with, I already messed up right out the gate. Welcome to Live with Lacey for my Military Appreciation Month celebration. I'm Lacey Langford, the military money expert, and I help the military community make, save, and invest money wisely. Happy Memorial Day. In honor of Military Appreciation Month, I've been doing a live show every Monday, Wednesday, Friday throughout the month on military life, money, and entrepreneurship. Every Tuesday, I've been hosting a fun giveaway. And on Thursdays, I've been releasing how-to videos. Today is the last day of my Military Appreciation Month celebration. I can't believe it's gone by so fast. My Military Appreciation Month celebration is supported by Self. More than 1 million people have used Self's credit builder accounts to build their credit and savings. You can learn more about Self and the work they do at self.inc. I'm very excited for my final, the best for last guest, Rod Griffin. Rod is the Senior Director of Public Education and Advocacy for Experian. He leads Experian's national consumer education programs and works with consumer advocates, financial educators, media, and others to help consumers increase their ability to understand and manage their personal finances and protect themselves from fraud and identity theft. Wherever you're watching, please welcome Rod to the show. Welcome, Rod. How are you?
Lacey, thanks for having me. It's such an honor to be here, and way to set the bar high for me. We'll do our best.
Yes. Well, before we started this, I have to tell everybody, I was super impressed. We were discussing how Rod and I both worked out right before this live, so might still be a little bit red-faced from it. But Rod, you did the Murf challenge, which is a big thing in the military community to celebrate Memorial Day. How did you do it? How'd it go?
To be clear, I participated in the Murf challenge and as a relay. I'm an old fat guy, so so next year, saying this on a live broadcast, the bar is going to go up. So myself and 3 absolutely fantastic women actually participated in a relay. So we each did a quarter Murf, which for me, going from 0 to quarter Murf was brutal. So, I work at Experian, and it's one of those things that it's important to me, and it's a way to show some respect for the men and women who made the ultimate sacrifice and the families and that legacy. So, it's something that's important to me, and in a way to maybe feel a bit of an absolutely fractional small bit of what Murphy sacrificed and the men and women who came before. So and maybe get me in a little bit better shape too. But I have the honor of working with some fantastic people, men and women who are veterans and absolute machines. I mean, just incredible. And I made it clear that I was not going to try to be doing the entire Murf myself. And they were incredibly supportive too. So, it's a way to do something that maybe reminds me too of what was sacrificed. So, glad to have done it. And next year, maybe half Murf, maybe full Murf. We'll see what kind of condition I can get into.
Well, I love that. I love that this is being recorded, because I'm going to reach out to you to see if you're going to be doing the Murf challenge next year. But I think that's awesome. What is the Murf made of for people that have never done it before?
Yeah. So the story behind the Murf challenge is a Navy SEAL whose name was Murphy, and I can't think of his first name, but his challenge to his team was to run a mile, do 100 pull-ups, 200 push-ups, 300 squats, and then run another mile. And she could do that the fastest. And that is an absolutely brutal workout. And so, I cut that into a quarter as a starting point. And then, so as I said, with myself and 3 of the women I work with, are doing a quarter. So together we're doing a full Murf.
Okay, so you did a quarter of the first run, the pull-ups.
I did a quarter mile, and then the math, whatever, so.
Yeah. That's
25, 50, 75 in a quarter. So doesn't sound like much, but when you haven't done anything like that for a long time, it's a bit. So I'm
just
still
as good.
breathing heavy. And if I suddenly yelp and reach down and grab my leg, it's because I have a cramp in my calf. We'll see how that goes.
That's good. I'm glad we just got this all out in the beginning so people know. I did not do the Murf. I just did a run, but I did do 4 miles. So I felt like I did push myself. But yeah, that's a lot of people do that challenge with weighted vests on. That's
Yeah,
the part.
well, that's the other piece. The true full Murph, you do it with a 20-pound weighted vest. I don't
Yes.
own a 20-pound weighted vest.
Yes.
So it's like,
Yes.
that's just, I'm so impressed and admire, the men and women to do that, because it's phenomenal.
Yeah, I think we definitely have a weighted vest. I think we might have 2. I think that's the required ownership for military people is to have a weighted vest. So I don't ever use it though. I don't want to take credit for something that it's totally my husband's. So, and the sled, we have a weighted sled, so you can put that on and pull the sled. So I won't be doing that, but maybe next year I will do the Murph challenge. We'll see. I'm not committing to it right now, Rod, because I know you'll call me as well and be like, "Are you doing
Yes,
the Murph?"
how you doing? There we go.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, I appreciate you being here. I kind of want to jump into some questions about credit because that is your zone of genius. Are you ready?
Absolutely.
All right. I want to start with the basics. Why should people understand their credit? Why should they give a crap about it?
Credit is ubiquitous in our lives today. You need to understand how credit works, because we know about it from applying for credit cards or car loans or mortgages, but your credit can also play a part in things like getting an apartment lease or getting a job. Not your credit score with a job. And I think we'll talk about scores and reports and the difference later, but the credit report itself can play a part in whether you qualify for a particular job. If you're managing a company's money, for example, it can play a part in verifying your identity that you provide in your job application. So to help prevent fraud, so you need to take care of it. Good credit can help you get lower, say, security deposits for when you lease an apartment, or reduce the costs for utility service connections and deposits you have to make. So understanding and managing credit from that perspective is really important. The other things to think about are that your credit history, if you're managing it and understand it, can tip you off if you're a victim of identity theft and your identity's been breached. It can help you take advantage of credit as a financial tool. If you're managing credit well, you can get cash back, you can get discounts on purchase, all sorts of things. So knowing and understanding your credit is a critical part of your financial health.
You brought up a good point there that I want to ask a question on. What is the difference between a credit report and a credit score? Because I feel like sometimes that's all gets mashed together. And when you're new or haven't really been paying attention to your credit and trying to learn about it, that can be confusing for people.
It can. And I see and read and hear things all the time that conflate reports and scores and make them sound like the same thing, and they're not. A credit report is a history of your financial obligations, debt specifically, and identifying information that helps match that information. A score, what we call a credit score, is a tool that's used by lenders to evaluate the information in that report. So they're 2 separate things. And 2 different companies, or 3 different companies do credit reports. Lots of companies do credit scores. And the way I kind of describe it in simplest terms is that if you remember being in school, which I sometimes try to forget, but if you remember being in school and you do a paper, that paper is like the credit report. You complete it. You determine what goes into it. The teacher is kind of like the bank. That she gets the paper, or he gets the paper, or the bank looks at your credit report. The score is like the grade from the teacher. The teacher evaluates the information in that paper, determines how good it is or poor it is, and gives a grade. A credit score similar, and the bank is looking at the credit report and using a score to determine the quality of that credit history. And that score is sort of like the grade on that credit report. So they're 2 different things. And what I always tell people is, if you take care of your credit report, all of your scores will take care of themselves. So take care of that credit report. Your scores are going to be fine.
That's a really great explanation. I feel like I've heard you speak a lot, but I don't think I've ever heard you explain it that way. And that is a wonderful way. And I'm actually going to tell my kids that about credit, because that is a way everybody can understand how the credit report and the credit score work together, ultimately for their success with managing it. What all goes into your credit history, your credit report?
Yeah. So your credit report is fairly simple, really. And the way to think of it is your credit report includes any information that's related to debts you owe and the identifying information that helps match it to you. So you'll see on the identifying information your name, your address, social security number, date of birth. You might also see variations in your social security number. We list all of them that are reported to us so that you have them. And so they're not errors when you see a listing of multiple socials. They're there so that if one of them is an indicator of fraud, you'll be able to see it. Most of the time they're transposed digits. So instead of 1234, it gets entered as 1324. We can help you figure out where that came from and get it fixed. You may also see name variations. If you've used different names to apply for credit, which kind of sounds funny, but it's not uncommon. If your name is, so for example, if I'm Rodney Griffin and I apply as Rod Griffin, you would see both of those names on the report if I also applied as Rodney. So we list those variations as reported by your lender. So don't panic if you see those. They're not mistakes. They don't hurt scores. So keep that in mind. But all of your identifying information. The heart of the report, of course, is your account information. So you'll see the kinds of accounts you have, whether they're installment loans or revolving accounts, which is just an internal fancy word for credit cards. Charge accounts, which are accounts that you have to pay in full each month, like American Express is kind of the common one that we see today. And then you'll see auto loans, mortgage loans, the things we kind of know about and are familiar with. You'll see how much your original loan amount is. If it's an installment loan that you pay once a month, you'll see your credit card limit, and you'll see your balances remaining on your accounts. Most important, you're going to see whether or not those bills are being paid on time, which is ideal. That's what you want to see, that your accounts are called current, not late. And if they're late, we call it delinquency. So how late are they? So that payment history is the most important part of the report. And so that's something to look at really closely. You'll also see your account association, which means how are you tied to that account? Are you the primary account holder? Are you an authorized user? Are you a joint account holder? So you're going to see that information as well. And then you'll see bankruptcy, public records if you've declared bankruptcy. That's the only public record in credit reports today. Everything else has been removed. So there's nothing about things like library fines, which, believe it or not, used to be part of a report. Parking tickets used to be part of a report years ago. Nothing about tax liens, whether they're paid or unpaid. So none of those things. Civil judgments, if you've been sued, no longer part of the report. If you owe a monetary judgment, it's just bankruptcy public records. And then you'll see a record of inquiries. Who's looked at your report and why? Keep in mind that there are two kinds. Look for what we call hard inquiries. Those are the ones where you've applied for credit, and so there might be a new debt that doesn't show yet on the report. Those can affect scores for a bit, but very minimally, typically for a couple of months. Soft inquiries are there, so you'll have a complete record who's looked at your report. And they include things like getting your own credit report, getting pre-approved offers, reviews by existing lenders, employment purposes, insurance purposes. So they don't affect scores, but you have a complete record. That's pretty much everything. Dispute instructions. If you find something you believe is inaccurate, you'll be able to contact us and dispute. So really straightforward. If it's not debt related, it's not part of the report.
That's good to know that they changed it and those things are no longer on there. I have a question about charge-offs. Things that people haven't paid on and then that debt is sold. Is there a time period that it's showing for the person you originally owed it to and now the debt collection company? Is there a time period, or do they, because I feel like sometimes they are on there at the same time?
They are, and that's another point, and I missed that. So if you have an account, it's charged off as a loss, meaning the original creditor has said, we're not going to try to collect the debt anymore. We're selling it or transferring it to a collection agency. What will happen is the original account will be updated to show charge off as the status. So that's the other thing you'll see with your accounts is, what is the status? Is it current? Is it late? Is it current now but was late? Or is it charged off? And if it says charged off, It means it's probably sold to a collection agency. And then you will also see the collection agency on the report. So you'll see the original account with charge off. You'll see the collection agency, which is now the current account. So if you want to work with that collection agency, you should work with them or try to work with that debt. Don't work with the original creditor because they no longer are taking responsibility for it. They probably would take your money if you sent it, but it's not the one who owns the debt anymore. So work with the collection agency, and you can do that. You can call a collection agency. You can pay the collection agency. You can negotiate with the collection agency. It will not reset the length of time that that account stays on the report. And that's another thing to understand is that the collection account is treated like an extension of the original debt. So it will be deleted at the same time as the original account, which is 7 years after the original debt became late. So 7 years from what we call the original delinquency date, the original account and any subsequent collection will fall off the report. You would see both of them on the report.
So they're not, the 7 years doesn't start when it got sold to the collection agency.
Right.
It starts when you actually took out the debt. That's a good
It
note for people to know.
Yeah, it starts when you became late for the very first time on that debt with the original creditor. And then that carries over to the collection agency. So it doesn't stay longer. A collection account will stay 7 years from the date the debt first became late. So, and you can work with them. It doesn't change. And they cannot change it. A collection agency has to report by federal law the original date, what we call the original delinquency date of that account.
Yes, that's good to know. And I think what you mentioned too is important is the status. I think when I get people, they're very confused. They're like, they're saying the same debt is, they either think that two people are asking me for the same amount of money, or they're like, I have a new debt for it came out of nowhere. Right. And so explaining, no, it was actually charged off. That's the status. And it went to this new company because they sold it. That was a business deal that they did. Sometimes I've had people think that they're in cahoots. And like the only cahoots they were in was they sold your debt to this collection agency. That's the cahoots part.
Yeah. And another way to think of the credit report is it represents a history of a debt from the beginning to the end. And so the beginning is with that original loan when you took it out, the end may be that collection account. And it's going to show that whole history. But each of those is a chapter. And when you see that status updated to say charged off, we understand that to be the final status for that chapter. And so that account's no longer the active part, but it's there to show where it began. Another thing you'll see in our reports today is an indicator of, if you see a charged off account, for example, it may say sold to with that account entry on the report. And when you see the collection account, you'll see purchased from or transferred from. And that way you can track that debt and see, okay, there's where it was. Now this is who has it, and I should work with them. So it tracks that history.
Yes. But if you haven't been paying attention to your debt, I think sometimes that's where it gets really confusing because you haven't paid that in a long time. And I think it just takes sitting down and really looking through everything. And those are good notes to have that It's been sold, it's been purchased, to look at it logically. When people, they get their credit report, but they want their credit score, how is the credit score determined? Is that a secret sauce?
Yeah, not really. I mean, so there are credit report. You have 3 credit reports, and I always hear this confused. People say they have 3 scores. They don't. You have 3 credit reports. You'll have one from Experian, one from TransUnion, one from Equifax. There are literally hundreds of different credit scores. So you need to be aware of that and know where you're getting the score and which one it is. So if you get a score from FICO, for example, they're kind of the most well-known. And we at Experian will provide a FICO 8 score, which is currently the most common score used by lenders. There's a company called Vantage Score that's a huge competitor to FICO. So there's kind of the number 2 score. So you may see those. The scales are similar. You could still probably see different numbers, but they're typically pretty close and mean about roughly the same thing. Banks and large businesses have their own scoring systems. So they create their own algorithms or formulas or whatever you want to call them.
Magic.
Models, different names. Yeah. Not really magic, but it's really intelligent people who look at, the information in a report and understand, after studying millions of reports, what information indicates in terms of risk. And, we hate the fact that we're predictable. Nobody wants to. I love to think I'm spontaneous, but my wife knows exactly what I'm going to do all the time, because the fact is we're very predictable, and I'm more predictable than most, probably. So and the same thing works with credit scores. People's behavior is predictable, and over time, behaviors and the way debts are managed are predictive of what will probably happen in the future. That's sort of the fundamental theory behind it. And very intelligent people with advanced degrees in statistics and probability and mathematics and things have studied and put together these very complex algorithms that are very accurate in predicting the risk a person won't repay a debt or be able to repay a debt as agreed. And that's what scores are used for, is to look at the information in the report that Experian provides. And Experian does not make judgments about that information. We don't decide if a person has good credit or bad credit or should be approved or declined. Those aren't the decisions we make. Lenders use scores to evaluate the information and determine the risk it represents for them. And they may have their own. I've seen different scales. So that's a long way to get around to when you get a report. If you get a report from Experian, we can provide and use our free monitoring service, or you get a report or score from a lender, they should tell you what score they're using. For example, FICO 8, what the scale is, what your score is within that scale, and find out what that number means in terms of risk. Is it a good risk? Is it a poor risk? That information is really important. And perhaps most important are the risk factors that go with a score, which is what people don't know about. That's the key to the secret sauce. How do you unlock it? That's what tells you what's in that recipe.
What's the most important part that the score is made up of? Is it that you don't take out a bunch of credit? Is it that you pay your bills on time? Is it that you don't, have a bunch of credit?
Yeah. It's one is paying your bills on time. And with every single credit score, that's the most important factor. Late payments will wreck credit scores right away. So you have to pay your bills on time every single time. With most scores, that's somewhere between 30 and 40% of the score. If you have high credit card balances, that's the second most important factor for most scores. So you want what we call your utilization rate, or your balance to limit ratio on your credit cards, to be as low as possible. That's another 30% to 35% of most scores. So you're talking 60 to 70% of scores is paying your bills on time, keeping your credit card balances low. So no real secret. You just have to manage your credit well, do some common sense things. You'll hear people say that you want to keep your credit card balances below 30% of the limit. That's kind of it's misunderstood. What that means is you never want your balances to be more than that, because at that point they start to fall very rapidly. It's that 30% number. It should not be a goal. It shouldn't be a target. The goal should be to pay your balances in full every month if you possibly can. That's the key. When you hit 30%, your risk of defaulting increases dramatically, and scores will start to drop much faster. So even having any balance can affect scores a little bit. The higher it is, the more it's going to affect them. So when you see that, understand that that's like a threshold you don't want to cross, but you want to be as far away from it as possible. The rest of the score is pretty straightforward. What is your credit mix like? How long have you used credit? What kinds of accounts have you had? That just sort of builds naturally. It's going to look at what you've done lately, say the last 3 to 6 months. Have you applied for new credit? Those are those inquiries. Have you paid things off? Have you increased your balances lately? What's happened, and what does that risk indicate? And then it will also look at your overall capacity and remaining capacity. So really the key is paying those bills on time, keeping the balances low, because if you do that, everything else builds on those two things.
Yes. I think too, if you have your cards maxed out, anybody can look at that and see, hey, they don't have a lot of room to pivot. If something goes wrong, so starting to see you're removing some options for yourself, and that gets into a dangerous zone. So I could see why that's important.
Yeah, I mean, and it's true. I'd been jogging along in the Murf challenge and tripped and fell, and my cards were maxed out, and I had to make a trip to the emergency room. Could I have paid them? That becomes the question. And so you have less room for, or less flexibility in terms of ability to repay those debts. And if you're maxed out, it doesn't take much to then have to start shifting your payments and what has to give.
Yes. Can you talk for a minute about Experian Boost? I'm a fan of this. For people that maybe are new to credit or fixing their credit, what is that all about and how can it help people?
Yeah. One of the things we recognized a number of years ago was that there are people who should be good credit risks, but have not had access to traditional credit. And we started studying what kinds of things are credit like that would help show that while they may not have had access to a traditional credit card account or a loan account, could we help them share to show that they should qualify, or at least begin to be able to establish a history? What we did was create something called Experian Boost. And Experian Boost lets you proactively add your positive, and those are kind of keywords. It's proactive by choice, and your positive utility payments, your cell phone payments, and your streaming payments to your credit report to show that you are paying those on time, even though you might not have a credit card or a loan, to help build your credit history. So if you have one account, and so you have an existing credit history, you can go to Experian.com/boost. Tell us what bank account or credit card you use to pay your utility bill, so natural gas, water, electricity, and so on, your cell phone bill, your streaming service like Netflix or HBO Max, I think it's HBO Plus, and so on, and give us permission to capture those payments. And what we will do is capture your cell phone payment and add it as an account to your credit report, and capture your, natural gas bill and add it to your credit report, capture your electric bill and add it to your credit report each month, like accounts. And what that does is help show that for people who have what we call thin credit files, or accounts with fewer than 5 accounts, they've had some issues and you're rebuilding your credit, it helps show that you're moving in the right direction and that perhaps you should be able to qualify, because you're doing the right things. You just haven't had an opportunity to show that through a traditional account. And what we're seeing is that on average, 2 out of 3 people see an increase in their credit scores, and in this case, FICO 8 scores, and it's about 12 to 13 points. For people with thin credit files, we're actually seeing averages of closer to 19 points. So it's kind of a big deal. It can be the difference between qualifying or not. And for a lot of people, it's getting established, and over time being able then to qualify for a credit card or a new loan, a small loan, or even a car loan. Talk to a person who actually was able to get a car loan after about a year, get you started. So that's what Experian Boost is all about. It's empowering people to add positive information themselves that hasn't traditionally been reported by those companies. And so it's really empowering to people as individuals.
I love it. I think it's great. It really does make a difference to somebody that is struggling or just starting out, and they don't have to flip their world upside down and be stressed out about credit. It's like, hey, we could just do some things like put your Netflix payment, and start working on this, because especially people starting out, they don't need to do anything big, like go get a car loan sometimes right away, especially young service members that are living very close to work and, carpooling, or they can take the bus on post, those type of things. They can report their Netflix bill and start doing it slowly. And then by the time maybe they do want to get a car, they got a foothold.
And who doesn't have a cell phone today?
That's true.
So, no matter who you are, you have a cell phone. And why shouldn't those payments, if you're paying them on time, help show that you are doing the right things to become creditworthy? And how do we empower people? That's what that's really all about.
Well, I love it. I really appreciate you being here, especially giving up your Memorial Day sometime. And I think it's really cool how you've been celebrating it. Can you tell everybody watching where they can learn more about you and Experian Boost, all the good stuff?
Yeah, and I made a list so I can keep track these days. But you can find us at every Wednesday, 2 o'clock Central, 3 Eastern on Experian's Credit Chat on Twitter. Go to ex.pn/credit chat. We're also doing interviews. Lacey, I need to have you on soon on Credit Chat Live. So ex.pn/credit chat live. You can find us there about once a month. We are capturing those videos, and you can find them on YouTube at ex.pn/credit chat live, capital Y, capital T. And we are building our Instagram site. So actually, you can find us at Experian on Instagram. You can also find us on Experian.us. So we're out there all over the place. You can find me, just search my name on LinkedIn as well. And we're trying to share information with as many people, as many ways as we can. And so thank you so much for having me and setting the bar high. I hope we reached it.
No, I think it was great. I loved your story. And again, thank you so much for being here, Rod. I appreciate it.
Sure. Thank you so much, Lacey. Take care, and everybody, happy Memorial Day, and hope you had a great weekend.
Yes. All right. I also want to say thank you to Self for the work they do to help others build credit and savings. To learn more about Self and their credit builder accounts, visit self.inc. I also just want to say thank you so much to Self for supporting my entire Military Appreciation Month celebration. It's been wonderful. I also want to say thank you to those who are currently serving, to military spouses, veterans, and especially Gold Star family members. I appreciate all that you do and know that you make many sacrifices. Let us all remember and honor those who made the ultimate sacrifice for our country on this very special day. Thank you so much for being here, and I hope you have a wonderful and happy Memorial Day.